Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Before we get started, I just want to say that when the price increase for ARK Survival Evolved was announced, I had multiple people approach me on Twitter, Facebook, Discord, and even a couple of emails asking me what my opinion was over the price increase. And to be honest, I didn't think much of it at all. From what information I had gotten, which I didn't even bother checking, I'd simply heard that they were coming out of early access, and I thought, no big deal. But then I thought that typically if there are multiple people asking me about something, there's a bit more going on. So I let go of my assumption and decided to actually check out what all the fuss was about. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, ARK Survival Evolved is an open-world survival MMO published by Studio Wildcard. The game was released into early access on PC in June of 2015, and for a long time it was the talk of the internet. It had become so popular that it seemed like a person couldn't kick a rock down the street without hitting 3 people that actively played the game. And while the genre and several of the game mechanics made me steer clear personally, even I could admit that the game had a great premise and a solid concept. The reason why I didn't personally like it was because I'd heard stories from people who had actively played the game about how their strongholds would get raided and destroyed by rival players while they were offline. I did not care whatsoever for a game mechanic that required a person to be constantly checking on their stuff in order to keep others away from it. I felt my time was more valuable to me than that, but I never begrudged any fans of the game. If that was the game mechanic that you liked, who was I to tell you that you were having fun wrong? After all, it's your fun. You do what you want. You enjoy the game, then enjoy the game. So for me, unlike so many other people, ARK was never big on my radar. All of that changed in September of 2016 when I found out that the developers of ARK, a game that was still in early access mind you, had released a $20 DLC expansion pack titled Scorched Earth, and much to my dismay, the expansion pack was actually receiving rave reviews on Steam. You see, this game was in early access. What that means is that people pay you money for your game in order for you to continue to develop it. Many of those people that back the game on early access also help keep you up to date on current glitches, bugs, and are in general a wealth of valuable information. Usually, in return for their backing an unfinished game, those customers receive a discount on the price of the game itself. If the developer is feeling particularly grateful, they'll throw in some cosmetics or boosting items for early access backers. But the developers, in an unprecedented action of blatant greed and avarice, decided to take the money from the early access program for the game, money that customers paid for to be used in the development of the base game, and used it instead to develop a $20 expansion pack that they then turned around and sold to those same early access backers. It was a move of exceptional greed, not to mention completely dishonest, and could be considered on some level to be borderline theft. The developers were completely unapologetic over what backlash there was, and it seems that enough people simply did not care that nothing more came of it, and development continued. Now, here we are nearly a full year later, and the creators of ARK have seemingly expressed their extreme greed yet again. A little over a week ago, gamers were startled to discover that the price of ARK Survival Evolved had doubled in price to a full AAA price point of $60. $70 if you buy the bundle with the DLC on Steam, and $80 if the base game and the expansion packs are purchased separately. And what was the reason for this price increase while the game was still in early access? Price parity. The developers wished the digital price to match the online price. And why did they need to do this? Why else? Pre-orders for the physical disc copies on the console versions of the game. In a statement released to the press, the community manager of ARK had the following to say. As we head towards finishing up ARK and launching it at retail, the retailers wouldn't allow a price discrepancy between digital sellers and physical sellers. Given ARK has over 3 times as much content now as our initial early access launch, we agreed with their requirement to match the digital price to the disc price when pre-orders started. Otherwise, it would be out of the question to see ARK on shop shelves with a simultaneous release. As soon as it was made clear to us by the retailers that a digital price adjustment was necessary for the launch, we let the community know through our various communications channels to provide a final opportunity to get the game at the original early access price. As relatively few large games have transitioned from early access into a full retail launch, we wish there was a smoother process for how to do it, but I think everyone, us in the industry itself, is still figuring some of this stuff out. And I have to say that I would be lying through my teeth if I said I didn't have a problem with this. The developers use the fact that there is 3 times the amount of content within the game now as opposed to when it first went into early access as an excuse to hike the early access price of the game prior to its full launch to AAA prices, which is a complete non-issue and is blatantly dishonest. Because of course there is more content now than when the game first came out in early access. I would be appalled if that was not the case. And to use something like that as your justification for a price hike is completely disingenuous. Now, I admit that I'm sure there were some difficult decisions to be made in how this would be handled, but given this particular developer's history, I seriously doubt that doubling the early access price was realistically a part of those conversations, short of a quick round of head nods before everyone broke for lunch. On top of all that, ARK is still reported to be extremely buggy, and it is doubtful that many issues within the game will be resolved prior to launch. Which leaves us with a developer known for their greed in a game that is as yet unfinished, seeing its price doubled. And is this game even worth $60 or $80 with the expansion pack? No, I really do not think it is. From everything I've read, watched, and heard from fellow YouTubers as well as Twitch streamers and friends who have played the game themselves quite extensively, this game is a $40 title at best. To see it being sold at a full $60 is very much not a pleasant sight. And while early access backers themselves do deserve a decreased price for backing the game prior to launch, I feel raising the price now is just plain wrong, and if I had ever considered purchasing this game in the past, that thought has now completely flown from my mind. There is absolutely no way I could ever willingly support developers that have acted as these have. The DLC alone was plenty enough reason on its own merits. But as always, please feel free to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Is ARK worth the price? What do you think about their siphoning early access funds to sell a piece of DLC for their as yet unfinished game? What about the prospect of their pushing pre-orders when the game is still in early access? Does anyone think that the developers might produce some sort of pre-order bonuses out of nowhere to incentivize new buyers? I feel like all of these are extremely important questions, and I do look forward to reading your answers. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time. Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and it has reached the point where so many people have actually requested SidAlpha t-shirts, I have decided to oblige. For an indeterminate period of time, you can get your own SidAlpha t-shirt, sweater, or hoodie over at teespring.com/SidAlpha. Link is in the description below. Nothing says taking pride in something more than advertising it to the world and wearing it on your body, so get your very own SidAlpha OG logo shirt now.